Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Kayla Christensen. I'm the Conservation Associate with Environment Oregon, working on our campaign to save the bees. And with me today, I've got four amazing panelists who are running their own programs to save the bees in a variety of fields. So today is also the first day of spring, just a good time of year to start thinking about our gardens and starting to see bees buzzing around in your neighborhood. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to have a little discussion about saving the bees and how we can all be thinking about our pollinators this spring. I'm gonna go ahead and get my slideshow started here. All right. So here's just a little agenda for the next hour roughly that we've got today. I'll start with just like a quick intro to Environment Oregon's work, and then each of our speakers will have a couple of minutes to share about their organization. Um, we'll save the last 15 minutes or so for discussion. So if you have questions for our panelists throughout, you should be able to submit them through our little Q&A function. And then we can take the last couple of minutes and answer some of those questions, whether they're for specific panelists or just kind of general questions for the group. Um, so Environment Oregon, just for a little bit of context and background, is a statewide grassroots nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving clean air, clean water, and open spaces in our state. We work on a variety of issues, including um, protecting our oceans, tackling plastic pollution, and of course, saving the bees. Um, so, whoops, there we go. Just to start off with, bees are, incredibly important, just like an amazing species. They're one of the oldest creatures on the planet and have been around for around 100 million years. Have co-evolved with the flowers that they rely on and developed a symbiotic relationship. And humans and bees also have a really long history, humans and honeybees. And we've, gone back, we go back a long way with our relationship with that species. So, today bees play a just crucial role in our lives. They are keystone species in many of our wild ecosystems and also really important pollinators for our agricultural crops. 90% of flowering plants need some kind of animal pollinator, and bees pollinate about 1 in 3 bites of food that we eat. So everything from coffee to apples to alfalfa. Um, so bees are, incredibly important. It's really important that we're taking the responsibility of preserving their populations seriously. And that includes just like looking at the risk factors and, environmental threats that bees may be facing. So a report by the Center for Biological Diversity showed that up to 1 in 4 wild bee species across the country may be at risk. And that's due to a variety of factors, things like habitat loss, climate change, disease, and the widespread use of pesticides. The pesticides in particular are something that Environment Oregon has worked on a lot over the last couple of years. Um, but we really do want to take a holistic approach to protecting our pollinator populations statewide, and that's everything from grassroots advocacy and public education to expanding pollinator habitats, supporting conservation initiatives, and working to pass legislation that will protect pollinators at the state level. And one of the ways that we've been really diving into our campaign to save the bees recently is with our Oregon Bee Heroes project. It's been like a multimedia storytelling project over the last couple of months. We've just gotten the chance to get out into the community and chat with over a dozen other Oregonians who are doing their own work to save the bees in fields from local government to citizen science research to nonprofit advocacy. And this project has just really highlighted how important it is to build connections in the community and work together and share all of our diverse resources to make change happen. So today we're here chatting with four of those change makers. Um, and I'll go ahead and kick it over to our first panelist to tell us a little bit about the work they're doing. Introduce Lincoln Best with the Oregon Bee Atlas through Oregon State University. And let me see if I can switch the screen share here.
Thanks, Kayla. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm coming to you from the Melitology Lab in the Department of Horticulture at Oregon State University. My name is Lincoln Best, and I am the taxonomist for the Oregon Bee Atlas. I am the guy that knows what all the diversity of weird bees are, to put it simply. It's my pleasure to introduce to you our major programs and projects that we run out of what was formerly the Pollinator Health Lab and is now the Melitology Lab. Some of you may recall more than 10 years ago, there was a significant bee kill in Wilsonville, which catalyzed Oregonians with Representative Reardon to pass a pollinator health bill to support pollinators throughout Oregon. Through this bill, and hiring the state pollinator health extension specialist, Dr. Adoni Melithopoulos, pictured in the OSU hat in this image. They put together the Oregon Bee Project, which is a partnership between state agencies, nonprofits, and this pollinator health initiative out of OSU. The Oregon Bee Project kind of acts as an umbrella for pollinator health in the state, under which we have developed many other programs. And so I'll introduce some of those programs to you. Firstly, we have the Bee Stewards. It's an online self-paced course designed to teach you about bees, their biology, ecology, and especially how to support them in the landscape. It's both online and in text, and it provides all sorts of different educational opportunities. So if you are generally interested in bees, their biology, their diversity, and all of the wild plants that support them, this might be a good source for you to learn all about our bees in our region. Secondly, we have the Master Melitologist program through the Extension Service and the Oregon Bee Atlas. So here you can see the framework for how these initiatives kind of interact. And the way it works is we have an online training course, a Master Melitologist course, which is self-paced and stepwise. It allows you to learn the nitty-gritty details and technical details about all the incredible biodiversity of bees in the state. And maybe more importantly, it trains you on how to generate critical bee biodiversity data by going out in the field, documenting flowering plants, and then capturing bees, which are then turned into our lab, which become this kind of fundamental data about bees in Oregon and beyond. And so the first part of this is just that training for members of the public to enroll in the Master Melitologist program and then be able to come up to speed on how we do our data collection. The second part of this program, of course, is where the Bee Atlas kind of comes into play. And the Oregon Bee Atlas is a statewide initiative to document the biodiversity of bees in Oregon, which we expect now is maybe 900 species or more, and how those many, many species interact with our incredibly diverse flora, which is something like 4,500 flowering plant species. So moving on to data capture and how the atlas functions, we train our members and they go out in the field and then they visit all of these incredibly remote and beautiful locations through the state. This animation shows 8 years of field collections among our volunteer workforce, which is almost all members of the public, some of whom are in the audience right now. And then, of course, this initiative has grown beyond our state borders, and we have created atlases with partners in other states and provinces. So you can see that our members get all over the state, into the alpine coastal sand dunes, deep into the Alvord Desert, and everywhere in between. And what they do is they document flowering plants through iNaturalist. So something that many people have done is you just use your smartphone, you document some flowering plants, and then you use a butterfly net to capture some bee specimens. So it's a lethal sampling program. We need to capture these little tiny bees in order to figure out which species they are. Most bees cannot be identified from a photo, and often we have to use genetic analysis to help us figure out which incredibly interesting kind of bee it is that we've found visiting some desert flower. So our members have taken photos of more than 35,000 flowering plants in Oregon, and this represents well in excess of 1,800 species of wildflowers, which are organized into more than 600 genera and more than 100 plant families. So they have done a remarkable job of documenting both the flora and its native pollinator fauna. So really what we are is a big data program, generating all this rich biodiversity and ecological data through space and time in Oregon, and where this program has been kind of cloned into Washington, British Columbia, Idaho, and so on. So maybe you can see the vision how this data production program might spread beyond even North America in the future. So we generate a ton of data. So what can we do with that? Well, what we have done in the last year is develop a website which is publicly available called the Melito Flora, and it allows you to explore all of this incredibly rich data. If you're interested in a particular county, you can filter our data by county. You could filter it by different bee species or groups you may be interested to learn about which flowering plants they visit. If you're a botanist, you can sort the data by those thousands of different kinds of plants and learn which bees might be visiting your apples or malice in the spring, or just about any other flowering plant you might think of that occurs in Oregon. And this will allow you to automatically generate one of these bipartite networks that you see in the middle, these kind of colorful spaghetti diagrams that connect the bees on the left to the flowering plants on the right. Whatever your subset of data or your search may lead you to, you can download a species checklist of the bees, maybe in your neighborhood or on where you're going camping in the summer. You can also download a checklist of the plants that have been surveyed at that place or at that time of year. And we have lots of different shape files loaded in here that you can just extract data for Deschutes National Forest or for the County of Multnomah. Or you could draw a custom polygon around Wilsonville and find out who are the local bees and which plants might be important for them. What is a bee presentation without seeing all sorts of the diversity of bees in Oregon? So through our DNA barcoding program, where we're trying to sequence one or more of every bee in the state, we take these images and I've just thrown them together so you can get a sense of the diversity of form and color and appearance of the bees that occur just in Oregon. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of species, many of which are poorly known or completely unknown, because we still have many bees in Oregon that don't even have names on them. And I know there's at least one person in the audience, Michael O'Loughlin, who's currently describing a new species found through his volunteer work with the Atlas. And so they'll be, yeah, it's amazing, creating a whole new species discovered in Oregon. So with so many species, this slide goes on for about 30 minutes. So our program is supported by this state pollinator paradise license plate, and we'd love it if you could support us. Thank you. Let's see.
Great. Thank you so much, Lincoln. The Oregon Bee Atlas is such a cool project. Also, just want to shout out that I know we do have a couple of volunteer melitologists who are tuned in. In particular, oh, I don't know if I see her here right now, but Carol Miles is also one of our Oregon Bee heroes and is a volunteer melitologist. So she's got a really cool story about what it's like to get out into the field and do some of that work identifying native bees, which I would recommend that you all check out. I'll add a link to that towards the end here. Let me see. It looks like up next we've got Christina, who is the volunteer executive director of Pollinator Project Rogue Valley down in Phoenix, Oregon. So Christina, I will go ahead and pass it over to you to tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing.
Great. Okay, there you go. I'm going to share my screen. Um, Thank you, Kayla, for inviting me. This is cool to be on this um, presentation, and I think you chose a good person to follow, Link, because listening to him again, I've had the pleasure of listening to Link multiple times. I am probably as far from Link as you can get. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a botanist, I'm not an entomologist. A little bit about me. I put this slide together. So, worked in the corporate world for 45 years in Georgia. Thought I was going to do a little bit of farming. That was me with my first little garden plot in a rural area of Georgia. Traveled with my husband in 2012 across the country, landed in Ashland, and got involved in some pollinator stuff. Helped make Ashland the fifth bee city in the country. There's now close to 300, I believe. So with Pollinator Project Oak Valley, I was part of that and began to realize that all I was hearing about was honeybees, and I was starting to learn more about all the intricate ecosystem that's down here in Southern Oregon. It's an amazing place in Southern Oregon. If you haven't been, I suggest you come to visit. And this was way before the Oregon Bee Project. So at that time, 500 species of bees in Oregon was a pretty big number. And I've been doing this since 2015-ish. And so now I get to tell people, and just hearing Link, that we have almost 900 species of bees. And that's really what we do is we get out into the community and engage with people from youth to adults, helping people learn about their ecosystem where they live without getting into too much of the science because I know a little bit of Latin now because of the work I do, but I am certainly not a scientist. I don't subscribe to being that because we have people like OSU, Link, doing that good work for us. So we're based here in Phoenix, Oregon. In the middle bottom photo is our demonstration garden out front in full bloom. What was that? 2 years ago, maybe. And so really showing people in a urban area, we've got Main Street with thousands of cars going by every day, but yet they can look over and they can see a wildflower meadow. Um, so that's part of our Growing Gardens program. We also have a native plant nursery right tucked beside the building, which is the top middle. Um, and Kara, our nursery manager, is towards the back. And just a shout out to Southern Oregon Subaru for being a sponsor of our nursery. So we have plant sales. So we got into being a native plant nursery because we were growing native plants, and so it's quite a major fundraiser for us every year, and it's a way to get plants out into the community. There are other native plant growers down here, and so it's a big deal. So if you happen to be here in April 26th, come on by. You'll see lots of plants out in the parking lot. We also have an adult education program, Habitat Academy, going up onto Mount Ashland and other places, working with different partners in the libraries also. We have our popular Pollinator Pals program, getting into schools and at community events, starting with the youth, to help them understand the intricacy of our ecosystems and what they can do, and learning what a seed looks like and how to clean it and how to plant it and how to harvest it, and looking at the pollinators in the flower. So really doing more community science perhaps, but just really community engagement, to get people to understand in a real world way what they can do. Our Rogue Buzzway program is helping people become part of a wider network, if you will. The little dots you see there are people who have self-certified their pollinator garden. So you can see that we do have a corridor that's building through Southern Oregon, can go all the way up to Eugene, can go all the way up to Bend, but this is the Rogue Buzzway, and we've been working with SOU since 2016 on creating this to engage the community. So I love this quote from Xerxes because I think this is just so indicative of what we should be doing as a society, creating places for the insects to live, the birds, all the creatures really. Where I am in Southern Oregon, I can see the mountains all around, and what I want to help people do is bring our pollinators back down off the mountains because they have the food that they can eat. Um, the native plants are the secret. That's how we're going to make a difference. And so again, having this kind of garden right there along Main Street and getting people to come and purchase plants and see what they can create, I think is what is going to save the world. This is Ethan, our Pollinator Pals education coordinator, and I thought it was just so appropriate because the kid who just happened to come by is wearing a Be Awesome shirt. So, how perfect is that? So this is another just a diagram to show you, what we're doing. This is a morning cloak that Ethan and Eddie, our other Pollinator Pals person, ran a summer camp. We released 15 morning cloaks with the school. So getting them to see, I mean, it was amazing. The butterflies actually closed the last day of the summer camp. I don't know how we did that. So, yep. And if you're interested in learning more about us, obviously we have the website that can tell you how to get engaged, either through coming here and coming to an event or supporting our work as a nonprofit. We can always use that. And here's just letting you know some of the events we have coming up this year. And that's not all of them because they haven't all gotten up on the website yet. So I think that's how we can make a difference, is being in our place where we are and getting people engaged.
Great. Thank you so much, Christina. Your project is just so fantastic. I know that we've chatted virtually a couple of times now, but I'm hoping to get down to your neck of the woods and
That'd be
visit
great.
this summer. You guys have a lot of cool stuff going on. All right. And let's see. Whoops. We'll pass it over to Emily Schmiedel next, who is, she runs the Hive Steward program with Jacobson Salt. And I think you have a really cool angle to this, just talking about kind of the relationship between honeybees, commercial beekeeping, and our native pollinators as well.
Hi,
Yeah.
everyone. You see my screen okay? All right, good.
Yes.
So happy to be here and happy to be included. I think sometimes as a smaller, I'm like basically a sideline size commercial beekeeping operation myself. It's interesting for people to think that, um, you know, people that have been so focused on honeybees also have a lot of space still left for all of the pollinators. And in my Jacobson Hive Steward program, I definitely try to do and have continued kind of along my history of working with Jacobson to be more and more imbued with pollinator advocacy and education in general. I have been a beekeeper for about 12 years, but working with Jacobson about 7. I started with very few hives, and now we have small decentralized apiaries throughout the Northwest, and we produce our own in-house micro lot honeys. And with that programming, I have tried to, and I'm constantly working on really using that platform and those products to be a voice for pollinators generally. So here I've just put some of the values of the Jacobson Hive Steward program up, as well as some of our core objectives. And I'm going to talk through some of the projects that we have been working on in the past and some things we're doing as we move forward. I included a few photos here. Here is one of our micro lot honeys, and this one comes from our Portland Riverfront Apiary, which is at Zidell Yards. So very inner city, just below OHSU for those that may be familiar. In the center of our city, it has traditionally been a space that, I don't know how to say this nicely, not a very healthful space. Since about like World War II, they had like built and dismantled ships and barges there. And so a lot of pollution, but there was this large grass strip that I had passed by for years. And I thought, I kind of want to put some bees there. And so for the last 5 years, we've been working on rewilding that and really bolstering the habitat there, along with having 10 to 20 hives there, which creates this honey. I work with a lot of different youth organizations, but what's pictured here is Wonderfolk, which is a BIPOC youth organization that's kind of like service work based. And so they come down and do projects at the apiary every year and then receive some pollinator education. And they actually harvest this honey with me, and it is the messiest, craziest day. But it gives them the full picture of what it means to really like be a steward to honeybees, enhance their habitats, and really think about kind of like all pollinators and any apiary as like part of a larger system, and then create like a product and a profit from that site also. So it's really interesting work. I work with children as young as at 4 or 5, Head Start, which is like a federally funded preschool, all the way to folks that are in retirement communities, notably Mirabella, which is actually right near this apiary. And they let me know that they were already watching me from their apartments beekeeping. And so I invited all of them down, and now that's become kind of some programming. Also, within this space, we have done work with the civics and science school spanning multiple grades. And also now we have a parent volunteer opportunity it's called the Cottonwood School. And I also take interns from Lewis and Clark every year from their sustainability program to do projects around how to make our honey operation more sustainable. And they present a project to our full staff at the end of each internship, and those are paid. So really, I've got to do a ton of fun programming alongside making honey products. And then new this year, this is very exciting. I received a grant from an organization called Zero Foodprint, and they are kind of trying to get a foothold in these like small food producing farms. And really the mission here is carbon sequestration. But I discussed what I wanted to do in terms of creating a more healthful environment for pollinators at this farm, while really thinking about like making hedgerows and woody plantings and riparian areas that could also serve as pollinator habitat. And I was awarded this grant, and it looks like we'll be planting anywhere from about like 2.5 to 4 acres of pollinator habitat, with all of my volunteers being from Wonderfolk and other organizations that we work with. So really a great community engagement and education opportunity around regional food, the protecting and sustaining of pollinators, kind of as well as, again, uplifting a small farm that's trying to like do the right thing and enhance their own practices and add to an already healthful program that they have going. And I pictured Shadow because every time we've walked the property or done anything there, Shadow has come along to be our manager. Um, there's more ahead for the Jacobson High program. I feel like I'm after, I guess, this past 5 years doing work in this vein, I'm just getting started. And it's true that I think honeybees can be a gateway drug to all caring about all pollinators. And I think I'm definitely in that part of my um, career, just delving deeper into how I can use this platform and this honey producing operation to better the lives of all pollinators and get the word out. Um, Thank you so much. And I think there's time for questions at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Emily.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how you're addressing kind of I think sometimes there can be maybe some tension between like the honeybee folks and the native
definitely.
bee folks, but I don't think it needs to be that way. I think it's, your program is a great example of that there's definitely room for everybody. Um, let's see. All right. And oh, yep. Up next, we've got Carrie, who is the City of Wilsonville Natural Resources Program Manager. They are a Bee City USA and have done a lot of really cool stuff at the local level to protect our bees. So let me pass that over to you. Oh, I think you're muted.
Try this again. Looks like it was sharing in. Oh, get there.
There we go.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here today. Let me try to get this in the right mode, though. For some reason, it won't let me. Can you see this okay?
We can see you. Yeah, that works.
Okay. Is
Not
that
full
working as
screen,
far as
but
the presentation?
it's not full screen, but we can see your slides.
All right. I'm not sure why it's doing this, so. All right. Well, yeah, thank you. I'm going to bring a little bit of the local government perspective. And so as Lincoln mentioned, unfortunately, in some ways, in many ways, our story starts with the large bee kill that occurred in Wilsonville back in June of 2013. And it was during Pollinator Week. And so it was truly a situation that, that took all of us by surprise here in the community. It was at a private shopping center. And they had gone ahead and did a spray on linden trees in the parking lot. And they had used a chemical that had the active ingredient of a neonicotinoid. And they had done it at an inappropriate time of the year or an inappropriate time as far as the number of bees. And so it's estimated somewhere between 50 to 100,000 bees were affected by this. So it's a truly tragic event that was, startling to all of us here in Wilsonville, and something that we didn't want the image of Wilsonville to be a place where bees are dying like that. We wanted to be a place where they come to thrive and live. And so in why am I having, sorry, I'm having problems here. Let's see here. Let's see.
I see a little button that says resume slideshow. Is that?
Let's see. This was working before. Um,
Comes with the territory with a webinar sometimes.
yeah. Let me stop sharing once again and let me see it bring this back up again. So sorry about this.
Yeah, no worries.
How's that?
Oh, there we go. That looks great.
Let's see, it just won't let me advance here. Let's see. There we go. That's working?
Yep, looks great.
So you got the full screen there? Okay.
Yeah.
So as a response to this, in 2014, we started to prepare a new program called Be Stewards. And we wanted to do something where we could look at a variety of initiatives in terms of planning, project development and implementation, advocacy, something that we're very excited to still be advocating for, the ban in regards to neonicotinoids and other chemicals. And then also the education and outreach that we can do within the community. And that's been critically important in terms of the messages that we want to share. So as a small program, the Natural Resources Program is only made up of 2 people. And so it's myself and my employee. And so it's always been really important to have partnerships and other individuals, organizations that we can work with and to really broaden, the impact of what we're doing. So early on in August of 2017, we became the first Bee City USA in the Portland metro area. We felt that was really important to have that message also in terms of the work that we were doing. We've worked with a variety of organizations, Xerces Society, a local environmental center called CREST. We've had a long-term partnership with Friends of Trees. I'll talk about a couple of our pollinator gardens that we've worked with them to establish. We also have a partnership with the Backyard Habitat Certification Program, which really gives us that opportunity to reach out to people in the community and to have them do some of the same good work in terms of what the city is trying to move forward. And then early on, we worked very closely with the Northwest Center for Alternatives to Pesticides, and they helped us develop the initial Bee Stewards program, some of the grant funding that we received, some of the work that we did in terms of, I'll mention, establishing our integrated pest management plan. So they're also another wonderful organization that's done some tremendous work within Oregon. So we adopted the first integrated pest management plan for Wilsonville back in 2018. And, like many of these plans, it has ambitious goals in terms of what we can do to preserve and conserve as far as our local pollinators, finding, practices that have less of an impact. One of the things that we've tried to do over the last, where we're going on 8 years now, is to really emphasize the cultural and mechanical practices and de-emphasize our use of chemicals. We no longer use, it's for quite some time now, neonicotinoids in the community as far as the work that we do. And then we've worked to reduce the use of other chemicals that can have detrimental impacts. And so every year we put out an activity report that contains everything that we've done over that last year as far as, the practices that we use. We've implemented some new things over the years, such as a weed steamer. That's been pretty effective with some of our work. Flail mowers, other things, the use of goats, we've used those extensively within our park system. And then within the report also, we show like this gradual decline in terms of the use of chemicals and the emphasis on those cultural and mechanical practices. We've done a lot of signage within the community that's associated with these projects that we've developed. We have a number of pollinator gardens, pollinator hedgerows within our park system. And then we also put out signage that gives people information about the types of plants that we've installed and then how they can actually do some of these things with their own properties. So it really dovetails nicely in terms of our relationship with especially the Backyard Habitat Certification Program. We're seeing a much broader reach in terms of this work that we're doing. One of the more important things that we've added over the last few years, back in 2021 in our main park, Memorial Park, we added a pollinator demonstration garden. And what's kind of unique about this is that we just installed basically different sized areas that we gave names to, such as a patio size or a courtyard size. And so if you go to this demonstration garden, there's an interpretive panel and it has a QR code and it'll direct you to the diagrams that show how you can do this with your own property. And there's also planting lists that are associated with that. So it gives a really nice hands-on opportunity for people to see how these things look and then implement them on basically any scale that they want to with their property. One of the other things we developed early on in 2018 was a pollinator toolkit. And within that toolkit, there's a lot of information in terms of, planting lists, pocket guide information, fact sheets, and it provides various, diagrams that show the types of plants you could put in, the seasonality of those plants, how you can make it the most useful for pollinators. And then we've had a number of events over the years also where we've tried to, teach people how to do this with their own properties, to lead by example with the work that we do, but then to put this information out into the community whereby, they can do this work themselves. So we've had a number of different things we've tried to do over the years as far as getting people involved. One of our upcoming events is we're calling it a pollinator pedal. And so it's going to be a 10-mile loop throughout the city. And people will have an opportunity to go and see a number of the gardens and hedgerows that we've done and, see what, once again, hopefully they can replicate with their own property. And just give people better exposure to the work that we're doing within the community. So that's about it. Sorry for all those technical difficulties, but seems like it worked out in the end.
Sure did. Yeah, thank you so much, Carrie. I'm glad that you shouted out the pollinator pedal. I think that that's such a fun event. Definitely something to look forward to this spring. Also, just every time I see them, the illustrations that are in your pollinator garden guides are just so amazing. They're just,
Thank you.
I think that's
We've
such a
worked
good
with a lot of really wonderful, landscape architects and people that are very skilled at doing this type of work.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right. Well, that was all four of our panelists today. Let me share my screen again here. All right. So we've got about 15 minutes, I think. We can open it up to questions. There should be a Q&A feature if folks can see that, where you can submit questions through. There's also a chat that you can drop questions in if you have questions for our panelists. And it looks like we do have a couple of questions here in the chat. This one, it looks like, is for Link, asking whether non-Oregonians can join the bee databasing project through the Oregon Bee Atlas. It's a really good question.
So yes, but it depends. So there are Atlas initiatives of this type in Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, Idaho, and New Mexico. We do have some other individuals enrolled in the Master Melittologist program and producing some collections in other places, actually all over North America. However, if there is not kind of a central state atlas in your state, then the collections you produce may not have a natural home. And so, at least in these 5 areas, we will accept your collections. They come to the experts. We identify all your bees. We produce all the data. And then eventually all your data is available online, contributed to these kind of large databases and different tools and so on. So we encourage you to enroll in the Master Melittologist program if you want to take part in this. And then depending on where you live, you may have a significant state or provincial atlas to join and contribute to. And of course, there's all sorts of fun expeditions and camping trips and everything else to go on with your new friends.
It sounds like a lot of fun. I know it's just the start of bee hunting season for you guys. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to that. And I think I may be wrong about this, but I know that iNaturalist is also a resource that I've used a lot when I'm looking at just like native bee observations in the area that I'm in. So I don't know if that's something that you guys use through the Oregon Bee Atlas, or if that's just a related kind of community science initiative.
Yeah, so we use iNaturalist to capture our plant data, and it's really useful for that. Plants are easy to photograph; they don't run or fly away, and the photographs serve as really good vouchers for that observation. Um, we don't collect photos of bees on iNaturalist, although you are welcome to, make observations of all types of insects and upload them to iNaturalist as observations. For us, the bees are very small. The characters to differentiate them and recognize what species they are rarely visible in photos. And so for bumblebees, it works moderately well. We know what all the bumblebees are. They can be identified. And so if you have a good picture of a bumblebee, it can usually be identified to species. But that's a strong caveat that you need the right angles and maybe multiple photographs. And so there's limitations there. But if you just love photographing insects, go for it. Get them on iNat and it'll become data at some level.
Absolutely. And then that's a resource that if you're located in a state that doesn't have a contingent of the Bee Atlas, that you can still kind of get your observations out there, sounds like. Um, all right, we've got another question. This one is, I think, more general. I'm curious to hear everybody's take on this. How did Oregon become such a bee haven? Was that a concerted effort by citizens, or was it an organic development of the state's culture?
Christina.
Did you hear me thinking about my answer? Um, well, obviously it starts with where you live. So I came from Georgia, and I mean, Georgia was a nice place. I lived in Atlanta, and we had, mountains around us, but the diversity there, the ecological diversity there is nothing compared to here. So any scientist will tell you it starts with the soil, it starts with, the land itself. And so since we here in Southern Oregon are in one of the most ecologically diverse areas of the world, really, there's going to be a lot of diversity of plants, a lot of diversity of insects. Um, as you mentioned, Kayla, I think, bees have been evolving for over 100 million years, so 120 million years of evolution together. And, I ask this of people to think about, why are there so many bees? Why are there so many species of bees? Why would that be? Sorry. And so if you think about, what do bees need? They need food. And if you have different, if there's a scientist here that wants to elaborate on that, that would be wonderful. But you have different growing microclimates. So you have different plants, you have different water needs, you have different sun, et cetera, et cetera. The plants grow differently. And for them to reproduce, because plants don't get up and move around like the bees do, they have to have some organism. And so it's either a bee or a butterfly or an ant or a fly, et cetera, that's going to make that reproduction happen. And so because you have different microclimates throughout the state, you have different plants, therefore by default, you have to have different pollinators because, as you know, flowers are shaped differently. And actually that's why bees are shaped differently. You have teeny, teeny, tiny ones that one cannot even see with their naked eye. They look like gnats flying around. I've seen that in Link's lab. It's like I saw a little dusty thing on the pin up under the microscope, and then I looked at it under the microscope. It was a beautiful bee. You could see its white hairs on its shoulders, Perdita of some sort. And then you have the largest bee, the carpenter bee, which most people see. So why? Because all the flowers are different, and the bees and the pollinators have evolved around that. So I don't know. Did I answer the question? And then I guess to answer the question, why is it such a place for people? Because it's so beautiful and you want to learn and you want to talk about it. I was just talking to one of my volunteers this morning. She was calling me up. The shooting stars are blooming. Everybody's getting excited. That's all.
I think one thing I would add is that certainly I come from the Midwest in Wisconsin, and one thing that strikes you when you move out here is that just the year-round blooming that occurs and the diversity of, whether it's native plants or, certainly we have had such a long history of, farming, nursery operations in the state, things that, from an ornamental perspective are so reliant on our native bees and our bee populations also. So I think it's just, that extreme diversity that we have out here and the wealth of, habitats that we have and just, how it really enables something like that. And then on top of it, I think it's just the perspective that many Oregonians bring to this and the fact that they want to see something happen and something happen in a very positive way and how they can be a part of that, and how they can participate. So I think it's a combination of factors.
I have something to add too that may be just a little bit more personal, but before this call started, I had mentioned this also. Like, I was gifted an ant farm, and observing like the sort of like eusociality and interactions of the ants is really like what got me into these, I think initially, but I think there's something really particular to like beekeeping that people are taken with because it has nostalgia and it has citizen science and it's very like future looking. So you can think that like the work that you're doing with bees, any kind of bees, does echo very far into the future. And there's also this like call back to something that's like pretty like uh, I don't know, kind of like primal even. Just the other day I was talking about how like Egyptians had a early understanding of pollination and so that they were like using skeps on rafts to move bees to flowering crops. This is not new by any means. And so there's always this excitement of like innovation within beekeeping, but there's something really like nostalgic about it as well. And I think that there's something in us that really loves that all of that can be held together.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. I was recently we Environment Oregon hosted a little workshop on how to raise mason bees in your backyard if you've never done it before. They're just a really easy native species that you can cultivate in whatever little space that you have. But we partnered with Friends of Portland Community Gardens. They had a really fantastic volunteer who's raised mason bees for the past 10 or 15 years, really knows his stuff. And one of the things that he said that really stuck with me was just like, you can have such an intimate relationship with bees as, we do have, like humans have relied on bees for a long time, in a lot of different ways, whether it's, managing them for honey or just the fact that they pollinate everything that we rely on. So I think it's really awesome and it's really unique to think about how we can really cultivate the relationship that we have with our bees. Yeah. Um, all right. Well, we've got just a couple of minutes left here. Thank you all again so much for your perspectives today. I am really, really glad that we all got to chat today. I just wanted to share a couple of resources as well. Oh, that's let's see. I should have some QR codes on this slide here. It looks like they're not coming up for some reason. But just in terms of things that Environment Oregon has coming up this spring, we do have, I guess I can just share a link after this, send out a little follow-up email, but our Oregon Bee Heroes project is live on our website, and you can, follow that. There should be a couple more stories popping up over the next couple of weeks. You can also read interviews with the folks that are here today, as well as other Oregonians that have been doing some really cool work to save the bees. And we've also got our spring bee-friendly gardening guide that just came out yesterday. just another way for folks to think about the space and the resources that they have and ways that they can get involved to save the bees in their own backyard or garden. But it's been really lovely having everybody here today. Looks like we've got one. Oh, Emily, I saw you drop something in the chat.
I tried to take a screenshot really quick of your QR codes and put it in the chat, but I think I
Oh,
actually
thank
only sent it to
you.
panelists.
Oh gosh, that's okay. Yeah, I'll send them out in a follow-up. We've got this webinar recorded, so I'll send out a couple links, and then also if our panelists want to include any resources, links to the work that they're doing as well, we can throw all of that in there. But we really appreciate having all of you guys here today. Hope you enjoy the first day of spring and look forward to keeping these conversations going.